Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Mr. J. This is W.A.D. MTG coming back at you again. Today is Tuesday, November 5th. It's the day of the U.S. presidential election, and it's the day after the Marvel Secret Lair Super Drop. And I have a different perspective today. After watching a few other videos and listening to what the community had to say and what some other influencers had to say, I have a different perspective. So I'm going to get into it real quick and go from there, I guess. So, rightfully so, I was pissed off yesterday. I mean, I was real pissed off yesterday. And that's completely understandable, right? Like, they wasted all my time. They wasted everybody's time. Now, I underestimated the desire for these Marvel cards. And I think everybody kind of did, right? Like, so, basically, where I thought there had been thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of people, some other influencers ran the numbers and were able to show that there were millions of people that visited the Secret Lair website yesterday trying to get their hands on the Marvel Secret Lair product. All right, so it makes sense that it crashed. So that probably wasn't like purposeful, that the site actually crashed and couldn't handle it. And that's happened multiple times before with other Secret Lairs. But they should have known. They should know. Wizards should know better. The one content creator I want to do a shout out for is the Pleasant Kenobi. All right, so I watched his video, and his video really put things into perspective for me. He was talking about anti-consumerism and how everybody's pissed off because this shit happened to a lot of people. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just a handful of people. It wasn't just a couple thousand. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, got their whole orders just Thanos'd right out of existence. They had their shit in the shopping cart. They waited in the queue. It said, get your payment information ready. Sold out. Now, see, from what I understand, though, is the people that still did get it, I'm still pissed off at some of these people. Because the people that did get it, they did underhanded things, unethical, immoral things to make sure they could get their hands on that product. So, from what I understand, there's 3 or 4 different ways that people were cheating the system to acquire the Marvel product. They were basically, there was the bots, right, that cheated the system. There was the bots, and then there was also let me see if I can get rid of some of that glare. Maybe I'll put this on stereo. So there was also like a link going around. Okay, so there was a link going around that people were able to click on that allowed them to skip the line and skip the queue. So that's fucked up, right? Like that's unethical as hell. You're gonna do what you have to do and step on everybody else's toes to make sure that you get to cut the line. Why do you have a right to cut the line? Why does anybody have a right to cut the line? Because there are bots and algorithms and hacking and shit going on. So they were able to basically backdoor their way through the line into the checkout and put their orders in and their financial information to check out. And then there were reports of people doctoring the timing of it. So they were getting in line, getting in the queue, and changing something on their device so it would confuse the queue to make it seem like they were waiting in the queue for much, much longer than they were, for hours, when they were only there for a couple of minutes. And then they were getting right in, placing their order, cashing out, doing what they had to do, putting their information in there, and then you know, logging out and logging back in on another guest account, putting in their buddy's information or something like that, and able to order for other people. And there are reports of people getting dozens and dozens of different orders of the Secret Lair, being able to log in, log out, buy the product dozens of different times, over extend what you're supposed to be able to do by the rules, and you know, you can't really blame them too much for doing all this unethical, fucked up shit and fucking over their buddy and fucking over the next guy or girl that wanted access to the Secret Lair, because they were doing what they had to do so they could get it. Because there were millions of people, and we're all vying over this spot. We're all vying over access to this finite amount of Secret Lair drops, and that's WotC's fault. But like I said in my other video, WotC has the ability to print to demand Secret Lairs, but they don't. They don't. Because of this anti-consumerist agenda that Pleasant Kenobi was talking about. Now, it's okay for them to do short print runs, right? For them to say, oh, well, we're going to make a couple 100,000 of these, and we're going to sell them, that's it. It's just a one and done, and we're going to sell them, that's it. If you don't get them, you don't get them. Now, they say that they don't pay attention to the secondary market, but when they manufacture scarcity, they're promoting bots, they're promoting hackers, they're promoting people to do this unethical shit, to get in and get out and buy it while while the getting's good, because you don't have access like you used to. You used to have a couple weeks or something to be able to put your order in, and then it'd take them longer to fill the orders, and then they'd ship them all out. But what happened when they did that? They looked really bad, because there were lots of times where people were waiting months on end, up to 6 months and stuff, before they were getting their secret layers. And that makes WotC look bad. Well, for the idea of optics, so they can look good for their shareholders and for their partners and other companies out there in the future who they might want to partner up with and make their IPs in the universes beyond, their IPs in the secret layers. If they only make a one and done and they make so many of them and they sell out, yeah, they won't make as much money on the high end, but from an optics perspective, they look great. They look great. So a couple years from now, they can go to DC Comics and say, hey, look what we did for Marvel. We sold umpteen 100,000 or something, couple 100,000 secret layer orders in a few hours, and they all sold out. And it was bogged down. It would have sold out in minutes, but it was all bogged down because there's millions of people trying to get in and buy it. And that only makes WotC look good. So it's fitting, right, that today's the day of the presidential election, because it makes our corporate overlords, Hasbro and WotC, look like a bunch of politicians. Makes them look like a bunch of politicians. They can say one thing to us and say, oh, well, don't have a fear of missing out, right? Don't fall into the FOMO, because if you don't have a chance to get access to these secret layers, what we'll do is we'll print these universes within. For those of you who are like hipster, purist, Magic IP purists, you'll get universes within versions of these uniquely designed cards for Secret Lair, and they'll be within Magic IP, and you guys won't have nothing to cry about, and you'll have access to these cards 6 months later. We'll put them in the list slot. But now what are they doing? They're not doing the list slot. So instead of coming up with an alternate solution to be able to fulfill their promises to their customers, their fan base, they're just scratching it all together and saying, oh, well, we're not doing list slot, so we're not going to do universes within anymore. So sorry, those of you that didn't get access to the Marvel Super Drop, that were in line on time, that took a day off work, that did extra shifts, that took vacation days, whatever they had to do, cost them hundreds of dollars plus their time, and it cost other people 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. Like myself, I was in line for 6 hours, and I didn't get access to it. And fuck y'all, because they don't care about us. They care about making themselves look good for their partners and their shareholders. Like a politician. They'll lie right to your face and say they're out for your best interest, but they won't really be out for your best interest at all. Not at all. They're out for themselves. They have their own agenda. So that's my shout out to the Pleasant Kenobi. He kind of gave me a whole brand new, different perspective on it. And if I see people with the secret layer, I'm still going to be pissed off. Because that means you were one of those people that did something underhanded, that did something unethical, that took one of the backdoor links or something, or you bought it from a scalper. And even if you bought it for 3, 4, 5 times the value of the secret layer and you bought it from a scalper, you're enabling these people to continue to do this fucked up shit, which is screwing over the community, which is screwing over other people who wanted access, who took time out of their day, who took maybe time off of work, and they just wanted to buy the secret layer. They didn't get a chance to. So, I'm still going to be mad at y'all. I'm still going to want to punch y'all in the face, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to punch y'all in the dick instead. And I'm going to do it with a deck. So, I guess I'll get into that a little bit. Now that I kind of tangented a little more about the secret layer and what happened and the bots and scalping and the backdoor entries and manipulating the devices so they can trick the system and into thinking that they've been in line for a long time so they can get in an order, get out, log in with a different account, order, get out, buy dozens and dozens of copies, making it so where the rest of us can't have access to it, and it's sold out. And it doesn't matter if you got your order put in your cart and you go to try to clear your order and pay for your order, you got Thanos'd out. So now that I touched on all that, I'll get to the punching you in the dick thing instead of punching you in the face. So I was so mad yesterday, so pissed off about it yesterday that I do want to punch people in the face. I really, really do. But I can't, as a grown-ass man, just go into LGS, sit down at a table to try and play Commander, and have somebody be like, oh, I'm playing Wolverine. And I'm be like, well, I'm going to punch you right in the fucking face, bub. Can't do that. Can't do that because then I'm going to jail. Right? Even though it'd be worth it. It'd be worth it. It really would be worth it. That's not what we're going to do. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to fight fire with fire, and we're going to embrace our villain era and magic, and I'm going to build decks for these. It's going to be anti-Marvel, Secret Lair, hero decks, but they're going to be like villain. I'm going to take the villain role, and I'm going to play anti-decks. So, like I said, I'm not going to be part of the problem. I'm not going to be buying this stuff off of scalpers. I'm not going to pay 2, 3, 4, 5 times the value of these secret layers to have access to them. I'll wait a little while. I'll wait till the hype dies down and see if I can get these secret layers for around what they're supposed to cost, for around market value. And if I can, then I'll buy them for close to market value. But I'm not going to spend double, triple, quadruple what they're worth to have access to them. I'm just not going to do that under any circumstance. I'm not doing that. So what I will do is I'll punch you in the dick with my cards though. So why is this showing up? Let's see if I can get this out of the screen. A little shadow on my air horn. So anyway, to do that, to build anti-meta decks, to build villain decks, to embrace our villain era in Magic, what we're gonna have to do is look at these cards and see what they do. So what Storm does is Storm, she has to deal combat damage, right? So Storm has to deal combat damage to do her thing, and when she hits you, the next instant or sorcery you cast has Storm. So in order to build like a villain style deck to fight against Storm, if you see Storm at a table, you're gonna need to you're gonna need to kill Storm. You're gonna need to stop Storm from dealing combat damage. So you can run Pillow Fort effects, so it's harder for her to attack. You can run kill spells and removal. So you can just continue to remove and remove and remove and remove Storm because you're afraid of the Storm count. You're afraid of her going off and doing her thing and giving cards that shouldn't have Storm, and then doing this crazy thing by copying a bunch of copies of a spell that never was designed to have Storm. So the first key in stopping Storm is to destroy Storm, to remove Storm. The second key to stop Storm, because she's a spell slinger deck, she's trying to build up the Storm count. She's probably going to have other cards in her deck with Storm, other than the keyword abilities, by giving her spell Storm when she does combat damage. So you're going to try and run removal, you're going to try and run Pillow Fort effects in this deck. That's what I'm going to do. So, and then other than that, the only thing I can think of that stops Storm is Stifle effects, because Storm is a triggered ability. So the way Storm works is when you cast a card that has Storm, it's triggered, goes on the stack. As soon as you cast, it's a cast trigger. So when you cast the spell, even if your opponent tries to counter that spell, all the Storm copies still come in. And they're copies. You're not casting those copies. They're just copies of the spell. And they just hit the stack for free. So they're free copies, but you're not casting these copies. So cards like Magebane Lizard and Vexing Bauble are not going to stop the Storm copies from hitting you. They're not going to counter them or whatever, right? It's not going to stop it at all. In order to stop Storm, you can counter the spell, but then you got to be able to counter all the other copies that are on the stack. And and unless you play like Flusterstorm, that's going to be a good card to throw in there. If you got to run blue, right? Because you have to have Stifle effects, because that's the only way to stop the triggered ability. So if you're going to run Stifle effects to stop triggered, I think there's like Void Slime is in Simic, right? So green, blue. Most of the Stifle effects I know of are blue. So you're going to run blue, maybe blue, green, and you're going to want removal to kill Storm. So we're looking at Sultai, black, blue, and green. So we can kill, we can stifle, maybe ramp and do some things and drop some big spells on her so we can mid-range her out with some big spells, some big enchantments, some big creatures in the late game, and keep removing Storm. Every time they play her, keep removing Storm, and if you can't remove her, make it difficult for them to attack you. And then Stifle effects on the Storm triggers. So even if they cast that spell and you can't counter that spell, hopefully you can counter the triggered ability of Storm on the stack that she enabled the card that she just cast. So that's how we're going to fight Storm. It's going to be a Sultai deck, and we're going to attack her card as a meta. So the villain, we're gonna do the same thing for all of them, right? So we got Wolverine now, because unless we can get these cards for a reasonable price on the secondary market after the FOMO dies down, the hype dies down, until then, we're gonna embrace that villain era, and we're gonna do the villain thing, and we're gonna build villain decks to fight these Marvel superheroes. So Wolverine has Regenerate. Regenerate isn't a triggered ability, it's an activated ability. So we're going to run cards that turn off Wolverine's Regenerate ability, which I think is cool. I think it's flavorful, right? That's happened a few times in the comics. So in Magic, though, the cards off the top of my head that I can think of that's going to stop Wolverine's from regenerating is going to be Linvala, Drana and Linvala, and Cursed Totem. Off the top of my head, those are the three cards that come to mind. That's going to shut down Wolverine's ability to regenerate. So those cards are in white and in black. So we're looking at least white, black. And the other thing I think I want to do to Wolverine, not only do we have to be able to block Wolverine, because there's other things he can do to deal double damage, right? Give him double strike. So basically it's going to be a Voltron deck, right? For the most part, we're trying to Voltron the hell out of Wolverine and kill with commander damage for the most part. There's probably going to be some other stuff in there, some +1 counter synergies and stuff like that. But for the most part, we're going to use aura enchantments, and they're going to be Voltron the hell out of Wolverine. So what we do is we remove Wolverine from the equation by using white and black to get rid of his regenerate ability, and we're going to use exile removal, because exile removal you can't regenerate in response to exile removal. So how regenerate works is it's a replacement effect. So if the creature would die, that means it would go to the graveyard. It doesn't, and instead you tap it and you remove it from combat, and it's regenerated and it stays alive. But I believe it still will lose all its counters or anything that you put on him, because it's like moving from battle as if it was going to go to the graveyard, and then it regenerates, and instead of dying, instead of going to the graveyard, it's tapped and removed from combat. I'll have to look that up and get a little deeper into that, if that's going to remove the auras or remove the counters from them. I believe it will, and I think that's why the obelisk was put in there as the adamantium bonding tank in that secret layer, is because I believe it will remove auras and equipments and things from him at the time that he regenerates. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop the regenerate ability, first of all, and then we're going to use exile removal. And then the third thing we're going to do to fight Wolverine is to transmogrify Wolverine, transmorph Wolverine. So we're going to use cards like Kenner's Transformation, and we're going to change Wolverine into an elk. You know, cards like that. So it looks as if maybe we're going to use Darksteel Mutation and turn him into a 0/1 indestructible insect, and we'll use cards like that. So, you know, Wolverine, it kind of fits. Darksteel Mutation kind of fits because the adamantium's indestructible. You take him and morph him into something different. Now he's an indestructible bug, but he can't regenerate, and it's going to be a lot harder for him to do what he's trying to do, because he's going to, in order to get the double damage and the rest of the Wolverine effects and the flavor, they're going to want to jam Wolverine down your face. So if you're able to turn him into an elk, not remove him, I'll take the 3. Fuck it. Then you're going to block him. That's the other thing we're going to do. We're going to block Wolverine. So we're probably going to use like fog effects, because Wolverine's going to win with commander damage on big swings. So we don't care if Wolverine kills other people. Well, we're worried about us beating Wolverine. We're an anti-hero, anti-meta, villain era deck. So that's what we're trying to do. So we're going to run cards like probably Arachnogenesis and stuff like that. Maybe Fog on a Stick. If we can do repeatable Frog, that's probably going to be great. Like Spore Frog or something like that. That's going to be great versus Wolverine. And we're going to block it. So we're going to put tough creatures in his way, right? We're going to make it hard for Wolverine to get through. So however we're going to do that, that's what we're going to do. We're going to remove his activated abilities with cards like Linvala and Drana and Linvala, Cursed Totem, cards like that. We're going to remove his ability to regenerate. We're going to block him, so when he dies, he goes back to the command zone, and he can't regenerate. And then we're going to use exile effects as removal. So if we remove him, he gets exiled, and he goes back to the command zone. They have to pay commander tax for him again. and then we're gonna play like fog effects and transmorgify. I don't know what's the word. If I'm missing a word here, what's the word? It's that blue card, right? That blue card that everybody plays. Where like you play in Rog-Rack decks, where you play Rog-Rack for free, and then you polymorph. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna polymorph it. So we'll use like maybe Chaos Warp, stuff like that, to get rid of Wolverine and send him back to the command zone. Get rid of his regenerate, turn him into an elk. That's the type of stuff. That's what we're gonna do to beat Wolverine. So I don't know how it's gonna work out. I haven't looked up commanders that might support those styles of play, like a Stifle commander or a polymorph style commander that's going to help me change Wolverine and warp him into other things like a Prison in the Moon or something like that. Eventually I'll land on a firm strategy for each one, but that's the direction we're heading to fight Wolverine. Now I think Captain America and Iron Man I'm probably going to use the same deck to fight Captain America and Iron Man. And I might be able to find a way to put both of those strategies to Stifle and to Curse Totem, stop activated and triggered abilities, and maybe I can build a villain style deck to fight both Wolverine and Storm. So maybe they might end up with their own individual decks, might end up with one deck that fights them both. But we're definitely going to have one deck that fights Captain America, and one deck, and that same deck is going to fight Iron Man. And we're just going to do that with mass artifact hate. The whole plan of the deck is going to be hate the hell out of artifacts. Because if Captain America doesn't have equipment to throw and catch, then he's just a vanilla dude, right? Or a French vanilla dude. And he might have like vigilance or something. I forget what Captain America has. But he has throw and catch. So that's what makes him interesting as a commander, is to build him as a Voltron commander with equipment. So what we're going to do is we're going to hate the hell out of artifacts. Now Iron Man's got that ability that's like birthing pod, but for artifacts, or food chain, but for artifacts. So that's how Iron Man's doing his thing. But if you're just, he's got flying and stuff too, but if you're just hating the hell out of artifacts, then what's he really going to be able to do? He's not really going to, his whole strategy is artifacts. Captain America's whole strategy is artifacts. So we're going to build a commander who just hates the hell out of artifacts. That's what we're going to do. We're going to hate artifacts. We're going to hate them all day long. And that's the villain EDH deck we're going to build to fight those two decks. Now, I don't really know which direction I want to go with that yet either, but when I get there, I will do deck techs on these villain decks that I'm going to make specifically to go up against these Marvel decks, because I can't, in all like seriousness, just come up and punch somebody in the face because they did something underhanded and took some backdoor line or something to get in and skip the queue and skip the line so they could get their Marvel super drop. Because if I was smart enough to do that, I probably would have did the same damn thing. If I wasn't working and I could have paid a little more attention to the community while I was in the queue, maybe I could have figured that out, and I probably would have did the same damn thing. So we're not going to punch people in the face, even though I really wish I could. We're going to punch them in the dick, and we're going to do it with our deck. We're going to do it with our deck. We're going to make it so miserable for them to play their Marvel Secret Lair that they feel the pain of the hundreds of thousands and millions of people that waited for hours and hours and hours on end and weren't able to buy their Marvel Secret Lair. So that's what we're doing. That's the main purpose of it. We're not going to be part of the problem. We're going to be part of the solution. And we're going to do so in a toxic ass way that's going to piss everybody off. And if you show up with a Marvel Secret Lair and everybody else is sitting at the table and they can't play their Marvel character, they're going to be pissed off. They're going to be pissed off. I bet 1 in 5 at least, if not 2 in 5, 3 in 5 players in every pod and every LGS is going to have a story about the Marvel Secret Lair and what happened to them when they tried to buy the Marvel Secret Lair. So I think it's going to be very gratifying to build these villain, anti-meta, anti-Marvel decks that are going to fight each character in the Super Drop. So now there's only one left, right? There's only one left, and we got the Black Panther, the Wakandan King. And real quick before we get into the Black Panther, I'll touch on why it's so understandable that people are pissed off, right? So a lot of people are pissed off about just Secret Lairs in general and about Universe Beyond in general. Now, let's just say the best representative of this is probably going to be SpongeBob, right? because SpongeBob fits nowhere in the Magic Universe. But neither does Marvel, neither does Fallout, neither does Assassin's Creed, right? This stuff doesn't fit. It's Universes Beyond. It's turned the game into Fortnite or whatever, right? Into some battle royale. And it's got a lot of people pissed off. I am not a Magic IP purist. I don't really care. I happen to like the Universes Beyond. And another, I forget who I was watching at this time, but another content creator was talking about, well, it doesn't matter what the IP is. Someone's going to have a story, right? So you're going to have a story, and it's going to be something along the lines of, oh, well, when I had cancer, or when my dad was dying, or when this terrible thing was happening in my life, and I wanted to escape it. The only thing that I could do to escape this terrible thing and have some sort of solace from whatever was going on in my life, from this hard time in my life, was watching SpongeBob. And that's going to make you feel like shit, right? Because you're like, oh, well, when you had recovering from cancer, when you were on chemo, that's what you were doing, was you were watching SpongeBob? And because SpongeBob got you through and now you beat cancer, you want to build a SpongeBob EDH deck? And for every IP, people are going to have stories like that. For me personally, my connection for why I was so pissed off was because X-Men reminds me of my dad. And when I was a little kid, I used to watch X-Men with my dad every Saturday. The whole family did. All the kids did. We'd come in, my dad would turn the surround sound on, and that iconic entry to the X-Men would play, and he'd crank it all the way up so the whole house, neighbors could even hear it. And it was awesome, man. It was awesome. And my dad, he had a kind of a crazy upbringing, right? Like when he was young, he went to the first integrated schools in Flint. So when he was young, preteen, teenager, like middle school, high school age, he had to, go through the first integrated schools in Flint. And because he was in Flint, he was him and his brother and a few other kids, right, were the only white kids in the school. So they were the minority in an integrated school. And so if you've watched the movie Remember the Titans, you don't have to live it. You can kind of understand how times were back then in the 60s during when schools were first getting integrated. Now, for me personally, I had a hard time with that. I had a rough upbringing. I spent half my life in the hood. My mom had split custody. So when I'd go to my mom's house for her time to have custody, she'd just throw me out on the street. She didn't give a fuck. She did not give a fuck. My mom abandoned all of her kids and blamed my dad for it and said, oh, well, having kids ruined my life. And that was my mom's opinion of having kids. She hated the fact that she had kids. We got in her way. She had responsibility. She couldn't party and do whatever the hell she wanted anymore. She had to try and take care of her kids. So she left my dad, and my dad, he took custody of all of us and still went to work and still paid all the bills and was a saint. That man was a saint. And when I had tough times when I was a kid in the 90s, and my mom would kick me out on the street in the city of Lansing. In the 90s, in the city of Lansing, gangs were still really prevalent. There was still a lot of racial hatred in the 90s in major cities across America. And in Lansing in particular, it was still segregated. I remember when I was like 5-6 years old, my mom lived in an apartment that was a segregated apartment. There was a white side of the apartment complex, there was a black side of the apartment complex. And it was divided by this wall and a playground. And me and my brother, we used to get jumped and stuff like that because we had jumped this wall because all the cool playground toys were on the black side of the apartment complex. And so we'd go over there and we'd get jumped as little kids. And it didn't change much the older I got until I was like a teenager, right? So as a young kid, in the 90s, times were different. My mom would just let us do whatever the fuck we wanted. Me and my friends, we'd hop on the buses, right? And I was like the only white kid in that neighborhood. So because my mom kicked us out on the street, I basically was taken care of by the Mexican family next door. And so I became really close friends with all of them, and they were like my brothers, and they still are to this day, my Mexican brothers. And so my mom would basically abandon us, and we would travel around the city. We'd go to the mall. It was only a quarter back in the day. We'd hop on the bus. We'd go anywhere in the city we wanted to go. But if we walked in the wrong neighborhood Mexicans walked in the wrong neighborhood, whites walked in the wrong neighborhood. There were even some white neighborhoods that were like, anti-black white neighborhoods back then too. But it was only certain neighborhoods in the city, and it wasn't very prevalent. There are a lot more anti-white neighborhoods in that city in the 90s. And if I walked in the wrong neighborhood in the 90s, I would get jumped or chased down the street. I got stabbed a couple times just for being white in the wrong neighborhood. So when I brought this issue up to my dad as a kid, right, the way he decided to tackle that problem and teach me about the civil rights movement and race relations and how people are supposed to be treated was the way that he learned, because his dad abandoned him. His dad was kind of a bad person. I later find out, I knew that he was Native American, so I'm not 100% like white. I'm Irish and I'm Native American. But for years, we didn't know what kind of Native American I was, right? Me and my sister, or my dad's daughter, my sister April. And we didn't know what type of Native American we were because my dad always hid the stuff about his dad, because his dad was a terrible person and he abandoned the family and stuff like that when he was a kid. So my grandma basically raised him as a single mother in the 60s. And then they went through the civil rights movement and integrated schools because they were poor, right? Because their dad abandoned them. Well, come to find out, my grandpa, my dad's dad, he was First Nation Eskimo Inuit. So when I seen pictures of this man a couple years ago for the first time in my life, I discovered that this man, he was black. He wasn't African black. He was American Indian, Eskimo, brown, black. But, at that time, in the 60s, he would have been looked at as black, right? Because he was brown skin. And then I never knew this. That's why, my dad wasn't raised to be racist in that time, and he grew up in that time. My grandma wasn't enough. My grandma had kids with essentially a black man before the civil rights movement. And he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't African. He was First Nation Eskimo Inuit, but he had brown skin. So even though I'm Irish, that's why I often, like, if I'm on the sun all summer, or I come down here during the winter, I'm on the border of Mexico and I'm getting all the sun, I look Mexican. Like right now, I'm still kind of dark for a white guy. Like I'm still kind of dark, and I haven't got a whole hell of a lot of sun this year. But if I do, I look either like Italian or Mexican because my grandpa was 100% First Nation Eskimo Inuit. So when my dad decided to teach me about race relations and the civil rights, he did it with the X-Men. So when I think of the X-Men, I think of my dad, and my dad's no longer with us. And for me personally in my life, he was the brightest light I've ever known in this world. So for me to honor him in any little way I can, that's something I want to do. So when I first seen the secret Lair drop from Marvel get spoiled, and I seen Wolverine and Storm in there, I knew I had to have them because they're the X-Men. And if you know anything about the X-Men, and you'll know that when Stan Lee created the X-Men, he created it in the 60s. He created the X-Men in the 60s, were the first X-Men comics. And what he did was the X-Men comics, the entire premise of the comics, were designed off the civil rights movement. Baby, shush. Shush, be good. So the whole story of the X-Men is designed off the civil rights movement, where Magneto's ideology is that of Malcolm X. And if you've ever studied or read up on Malcolm X and what he taught and what he believed and what he thought and what he preached around that time in the civil rights movement, you will see the correspondences that he directly mirrors Magneto and his ideology in the X-Men comics. And now Magneto always says, like this, if you watch X-Men 97 last year, that was huge. I love it, by the way. Awesome. They did a fantastic job. If you like the X-Men, you like Marvel, and you haven't watched it yet, you've got to watch X-Men 97. So if you watch X-Men 97, you would know that it's been a big thing. I was going to get a t-shirt. I can't wait to do it. It says Magneto was right. Right? Magneto was right. And Magneto's ideology throughout the whole X-Men series is that mutants can't live with humans. And if you think of that in a civil rights perspective, it's that the black people and white people aren't going to be able to live together. We're not going to be able to get along. We're not going to be able to work together in harmony. Now, whose dream was that, right? Professor X's. It was Professor X's dream that mutants and humans were going to live together in perfect harmony. We're going to work together. We're going to love each other. We're going to have kids together. We're going to, be one and the same. That you would judge these people not based on their mutant abilities or their genetics, like their skin color, on their genetics, or what makes them different, or their mutant abilities, but you judge these people on who they were as people. That these people were heroes, right? That their mutant abilities gave them these spectacular abilities. That's what made them different. That's what made them great, right? And I believe that. And when my dad taught me, like I'm getting kind of tearing up a little bit, man, getting emotional just thinking about it. When my dad taught me about how you're supposed to treat people, and how you treat people of different races, different creeds, different colors, different religions, and how they're supposed to treat you, and how you're supposed to look at these people, how you're supposed to value these people based off of who they are as a person, what they offer the world, what skills they have, what talents they have, what makes them different, what makes them great. He did that with the X-Men, and that's how he taught me, was with the X-Men. And that's Stan Lee's legacy, right? That's part of Stan Lee's legacy, is that's how he brought the civil rights movement to America in the 60s. How he made it palatable for white America in the 60s was he told the story of the civil rights movement, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, through the eyes of Magneto and Professor X, and the story about the humans and the mutants, and how the humans hated the mutants, and how they're prejudiced and did all these different things that were evil towards the mutants, and put them in concentration camps. I mean, Magneto, he wasn't black, right? But he was Jewish. He was Jewish. And if you go to his background, he survived concentration camps, Nazi concentration camps, with his mom, where you see his mom was killed. His family was killed by the Nazis. And then Professor X was handicapped. He was handicapped. He's quadriplegic. He was in a wheelchair. So when I have a special spot in my heart, when I say I've got a special spot in my heart for the X-Men, that's what I mean. And that's why I was so upset. And not just because I'm a big fan of Marvel, not because I'm a big fan of X-Men, because when I think of the X-Men, I think of my dad. So now that I get back to, I've been full circle now, right? Full circle now. Talk about the X-Men and why it came to be, and well, we've talked about the anti-meta decks, and now we're on the last one, which is Black Panther, right? So people who wanted to buy Black Panther now, he was the last one to sell out, the non-foil Black Panther. So you got to think the people that probably want Black Panther the most are the people that most associate themselves with Black Panther, and that's probably going to be young black men that play Magic. Now, black men in America, I think black people in America is like 17%, 18% of the population. So out of that percentage of the population, how much of the percentage of that population plays Magic? How much of those percentage are women that wanted to play as a black woman at Storm? When you look at content creators and you look at people from different races and you look at who their commanders are often a very unique form of expression. Like, look at Joe Johnson, right? Look at the commanders that he plays, and tell me that the decks that he builds and the commanders that he chooses to play, a lot of them aren't reflections of his black heritage in America. They absolutely are. They absolutely are. You know, he calls himself Bushido Brown or Black Nito, like off of Magneto, who I just told you was the incarnation of the ideology of Malcolm X. So in his family, I'm sure he learned growing up. I'm sure he learned these things growing up. I'm certain that that's who he was excited about, was to buy Black Panther and Storm, right? If you're a black woman in America and you play Magic, I'm sure you wanted Storm, right? I wanted Storm myself. Storm's sexy, but, you know, and I love the character. But I don't have that personal of a connection with Storm in particular. My favorite X-Men is Wolverine. I also like Cyclops. I also like Gambit, Nightcrawler, pretty much all the X-Men. So that's kind of my thing. I was just trying to collect the X-Men because the X-Men remind me of my dad. But people who want to play as Black Panther, as T'Challa, right? The Wakandan king. Just a few years ago, his movie blew up. Now, the actor that played him ended up dying. I think he had a form of cancer, right? I think it was actually like rectal cancer or something like that he died of. And but if you remember, if you watched the movies and you watched all the Avengers movies and stuff like that, the Black Panther movie, Wakanda Forever, right? That was huge. It was huge. Black Panther broke records. The black community in America showed up in force for the Black Panther movie, and it broke records. And for months, people were Wakanda Forever, right? It's a fictional country, but it's not about the fictional country. It's about what that message represents. and what it means to them as people. And so you got to respect that. And when people are upset, when you find out that people are upset because they're one of the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that got shit on, that got Thanos snapped out of their shopping cart, out of their Marvel Super Drop, maybe you should think twice about why they're so pissed off. For me, it was, it reminds me of my dad, like X-Men, and all the memories of watching X-Men as a kid, and him teaching me about the civil rights movement and how people should be treated. But for other people, like for people like Joe Johnson, for example, you think he's going to be pissed off if he didn't get the Black Panther? He's got money, dude. He's a celebrity. He could probably, and he lives in California. I'm sure you can get access to it if you didn't get access to it. You can always proxy it, right? That's something I talked to my friend. I got a friend who owns a card shop, and it's a card shop. He's done it for years, right? And I think it's more focused on comics right now. He wanted me to kind of help buy in, to help run the card shop side of things like we used to back when, in the height of our standard playing days. So I think he's generally more focused on comics, but he still plays Magic, and the same thing happened to him. So all my Magic friends were in line trying to get that Marvel Super Drop, and none of them got it. Not a single one of them. None of us got it. So we all got Thanos snapped. We all, I had the shit in my cart, and by the time I got through the queue, that was it. The bots and the people that were able to sign out and sign in and take these backdoor links and all this different shit that they were able to do to skip the line and then sign out and get their payment information in and then sign back in under a different guest account and make multiple orders and dozens of orders. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. So when someone's pissed off that they didn't get T'Challa, maybe you should think about, this person's probably proud of their Black heritage. They're probably proud of their family lineage. Maybe they wanted to represent themselves on the board. Maybe they wanted to express themselves on the board as an African king, the Wakandan king, right? And that's going to mean something special to them. Something that's more than just, oh, well, I like Marvel, right? I'm a big fanboy of Marvel. It means more to them because of their heritage, right? Because of their history, their family history, because of everything they've went through, because of the civil rights movement. That's why this stuff means something to people, all right? So, Black Panther, he's very unique. Out of the 5, I think he's the most unique commander out of the 5 Marvel commanders in the Secret Lair drop. And how are we going to fight Black Panther? Well, it sucks to say it. But he's so unique. He's a 2-drop. Removal isn't really going to help. You're just going to play him again. He's going to use a lot of +1 synergies. So what we're going to do is we're going to first of all, we're going to try and take away the +1 synergies. Now, there's only a couple cards I know of that really do that effectively, like Solemnity, for example. And I'm running that currently in my Spirit deck, which isn't like dedicated spirits, but it's mostly a Spirit deck. And I'm doing it for a couple different reasons. I don't want to get too deep into it until I do the deck tech for that particular deck. But we're going to use like Solemnity effects. And the other thing that T'Challa, the Wakandan king, does exceptionally well and unique is he puts it's the vibranium mining ability, right? Where he's putting counters on his lands and being able to move the counters from the lands onto different creatures he controls, including himself. So there's going to be several different ways to build the Black Panther, to build T'Challa. There's going to be several different ways to build him. But I think the number one strategy to killing T'Challa and shutting T'Challa down as a villain style deck that's anti-Black Panther, that's going to try to destroy the Black Panther, is going to be land destruction. Land destruction. Now, that's something that pisses off every EDH player, right? And after speaking about why people why they would be so connected to playing as T'Challa, the Wakanda King, as the Black Panther, it sucks to say, okay, well, you're a white dude who's a quarter First Nation Eskimo Inuit, and you're gonna come in and you're gonna take their fucking land. But yeah, I'm embracing my villain era in Magic. I didn't get the Marvel Super Drop. I've got individual deck ideas that are gonna go against they're gonna fight all these Marvel superheroes. And the thing that comes to mind when I think of how to combat T'Challa is land destruction. So you gotta have a Rule 0 conversation, right? You're sitting down with with characters from the Marvel Secret Lair, and I'm willing to bet, like I said, like at least 2 out of every 5, 3 out of every 5 players is gonna have a story about how they got fucked over on the Marvel Secret Lair, and we're able to order. So every pod you sit down with, where they're gonna have that, and someone's like, "Whoa, I managed to get it because I backdoored my way and skipped the line," or "I managed to get it because I bought it off a scalper for $300," or "I did it because I proxied it." Now that's actually the least guilty way. If someone says they proxied the Black Panther, I'm not gonna pull out this villain Black Panther deck and destroy your land, right? I'm not gonna do that. But if you spent double and triple, if you bought into the scalping, if you enabled this fucked up shit, if you skipped lines and did this kind of stuff, it's gonna be a case by case scenario, right? Where I'm gonna base my judgment on which deck I pick to play you against, based off of your story on how you acquired your Marvel Secret Lair. I'm not gonna punch you in the face. I'm not gonna do it. I have a different perspective. Give credit where credit is due to the Pleasant Kenobi. His video is spectacular. I love his insights. He always does a great job. I also like how he says the word fuck all the time, and his like unique European UK way of cussing and how he don't care. He's off the cuff. I respect that. I respect that because he doesn't censor himself for YouTube. He genuinely comes out as himself, and like I'm doing. And even if I'm angry, if I'm upset, I'm always going to be off the cuff. I don't write none of this shit down. So everything I'm saying, I'm just saying off the cuff, off the top of my head, as I go. And all the videos I'm going to do, it's going to be like this. So, credit where credit is due to Pleasant Kenobi and his opinions and his perspective on this that kind of changed my perspective and made me think, okay, well, I'm not going to be mad at the players as much. I'm still going to want to punch them in the face, but instead we're going to punch them in the dick. And we're going to do it by building specific decks and embracing our villain era in Magic and EDH. And we're going to build anti-meta, anti-Marvel meta Magic decks, EDH decks. And it's sad to say, the one that's going to fight T'Challa, the Wakanda King, is going to be a land destruction deck. And that's fucked up flavorfully, but I'm going to try and do my best to try and add stuff into each one of these decks. Once I get the core of the deck together and I get the shell together for each one of these anti-Marvel decks, I'm going to do my best to try and throw a little bit of Marvel flavor into that build so it makes sense. So it's not just like, oh, you're racist, you're blowing up his lands. No, because I'm absolutely not. I'm absolutely not. I've never have been. Some of my best friends in the world are black. I've had a lot of black girlfriends, a lot of Mexican girlfriends. I tend not to even date white girls. I tend not to. For specific reasons. That's my choice. That's my prerogative. But I'm definitely not one of those types of people. So when I throw for that particular deck, I'm going to have to go a little bit more out of my way to throw Marvel flavor into the reason why I'm blowing up the Vibranium lines, right? So I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm going to look into the comics. I'm going to look into the history. I'm going to look into who these people are. Like for Wolverine, right? It probably makes sense to throw a bunch of clones in there because Wolverine has history with Mystique. For Storm, even though I said Storm is probably going to be like a Sultai base, Storm's biggest enemy is she has two, right? The Shadow King and the Adversary. We're both like spirits or demons, right? So maybe I can find a demon in Sultai to lead that particular deck. Now I don't think that's going to be a Stifle-like commander, but I don't know if there really is any Stifle commanders. And for Wolverine, obviously his biggest enemy is probably Sabretooth or the government. So you can try and throw some like government flavor in there because of Stryker, right? William Stryker. So you can try and throw some maybe government flavor into that deck after you get the shell together. That's going to be taken away as activated abilities. And for Iron Man, Captain America, maybe you could throw some like as much as you want to do it, like World War II theme, because Captain America famously fought the Nazis. So I don't think you're going to want to throw Nazi flavor into an anti-artifact deck if it's even possible. But maybe you could throw some Red Skull stuff in there. Maybe you could throw a character in there. Maybe you can find a commander. Oh, you know who would be great? The Ilaxor or Ilaxanor or whatever the dude is. Turns all the damage into his power for all your burn spells. And then you're in red. You're mono red. But he's, you kind of play it like the Red Skull, right? But the Red Skull wasn't an Iron Man enemy. So I don't know how I'm going to go about doing that. I'm going to take a lot of these things into consideration. It's going to be really in-depth builds for these EDH decks that are going to be my villain decks to fight the Marvel heroes. But that's what I'm going to do. If I can't get my hands on these decks for a reasonable price, then I'm going to build anti-meta. I'm going to embrace my villain era, and I'm not going to punch you in the face in real life, but I'm going to use my deck, and I'm going to punch your deck right in the dick. And that's all I got. I'm Mr. J, and this is W.A.D. MTG.